Well, one effect of the pandemic and its lockdowns has been a rise in drug use worldwide, including cocaine. Now, for drug cartels, that's big business, and it's had ramifications for communities across Latin America. Our next report takes us to Colombia, where Mexican drug cartels appear to be playing a bigger role.
These farmers used to harvest coca plants 3 times a year, but now they have to double that, as Mexican drug cartels look to cultivate not just cocaine, but their relationships with the farmers who grow it. The cartels send representatives to pay farmers in advance and push highly productive strains.
For the first time in many years, coca growers in the region have the cash immediately and often up front, because the ability to move money from the areas of Cúcuta to Catatumbo, for example, is immense.
The cartels are awash with money, and many farmers in the region need it, which also makes them more willing to comply with cartels' demands to boost efficiency. And it seems to be working. Average annual yields of cocaine cultivated per hectare has risen. Good news for the cartels, but more pressure on the farmers.
Whoever has control of the cultivation areas and laboratories and can meet demand can also maintain relations with the Mexican cartels.
Some farmers are experimenting with new seeds. These varieties are especially fruitful and a product of cartel-funded cultivation. And it doesn't stop there. The cartels are also funding labs and warehouses to coordinate shipments, and even investing in docks with access to Pacific Ocean.
Drug trafficking has increased because the government has given up. And it's not just now. It has been happening for years. Trafficking has deep roots here because the government has been permissive. The state has been permissive with poor families.
Activists say gangs and cartels are profiting off of the poverty, fewer opportunities, and lack of state presence. For the farmers, it's a source of much-needed income, and they have very little choice but to accept.
Elizabeth Dickinson is a senior analyst for the International Crisis Group. She joins me now from Bogota. Elizabeth, help us to understand this a little bit better. Why are Mexican cartels choosing this moment right now to really up their involvement in Colombia?
I think it's a simple question of supply and demand. The demand for drug has generally increased since the pandemic, and the Mexican cartels are well positioned to move that product from Colombia, which is one of the largest suppliers of cocaine, unfortunately, to the most in-demand markets. Now, I think that we need to make a clear distinction here. Although the Mexican cartels are very important in terms of setting the price and being the main primary buyer for this product, on the ground in Colombia, their role remains extremely limited. And I would say in many cases, really only a commercial relationship rather than any sort of innate relationship with the dynamics of armed groups and conflict within Colombia.
At the same time, it sounds like drug growers, coca growers in Colombia are planting less acreage, and yet they're reaping higher yields, and they're being paid, in some cases, with weapons. What does this mean for overall stability in these regions?
It's a very challenging dynamic. There have been advances in the efficiency of the production of coca in recent years, which means that you can produce more cocaine per hectare of coca grown. But really, again, I think the price issue has been one of the primary reasons that the production has increased so significantly. The price being paid here has risen in recent months and over the past several years, and that really incentivizes armed and criminal groups to go into these communities that have traditionally grown coca, and including into new areas that we've seen expand into coca since the signing of the 2016 peace agreement here, and really, in some cases, coerce farmers to grow this product. We have to also be clear that what farmers themselves are earning from growing coca is really a subsistence living. So the benefits, sort of the gains of this product, are all higher up the food chain in terms of armed and criminal groups. That gives them enormous power in the countryside, and they have exercised it ruthlessly in terms of controlling territory and populations, and it shows no sign of stopping in the coming months, unfortunately.
Well, the government of Colombia, meanwhile, targeting coca farmers, in many cases by eradicating their crops. Is this the right way to go about it? Is that fair on farmers? And if not, what should be done to put a dent in the supply of cocaine?
Well, what the current approach does is essentially puts the entire cost of what's happening here on poor farmers who are in many cases violently obliged to cultivate coca. So I think it is absolutely the wrong approach. In fact, what's needed is to look, again, higher up the food chain at where the profits really are, looking at trafficking, looking at really tackling financial profits abroad, money that's being moved, for example, into the United States, where it's often quite untouchable. And instead, the current approach, what it has essentially done is alienated these poor farmers in the countryside who find themselves between a rock and a hard place. They're being forcibly obliged to cultivate in many cases. They have no alternative lifestyle that would be able to provide them a subsistence income. And at the same time, they're being persecuted both by armed groups and by the government in this impossible situation. This does very little additionally to affect the actual production of cocaine. There's been a significant amount of research about the levels of replanting. So when eradication happens at the moment, we've been told by the armed forces here in Colombia that replanting rates can be up to 85 to 90%, which is to say that for every hectare or every 100 hectares you eradicate, you're really only eradicating 10 or 15. An enormous investment in money with a very confrontational approach towards the community with very little payoff.
All right, so not only unfair, but ineffective in many ways. Elizabeth Dickinson with the International Crisis Group in Bogota, thank you so much.